Being racist in America costs all of us. It's very well understood now that no one can afford college because of Ronald Reagan. College in the United States used to be affordable, if not free, until the 1980s and Ronald Reagan. And they realized that a ton of Black Americans were starting to go to secondary universities. So they made the cost of going to college astronomical, unaffordable, unapproachable to try to whitewash attendance. Unfortunately, for a lot of lower and middle income white people, that also meant you get caught up in the net. Now no one can afford fucking college because they tried to keep Black and brown people out. And it's happening again in 2025 in the big fucking stupid budget bill that they've come up with. They're cutting Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and FEMA. Why? Why are they cutting all of these programs? So that they can build detention centers for ICE. So because you're racist against brown people and you don't want brown people in this country, they're going to spend billions of dollars on building detention centers, camps, prisons. They're going to use your tax money to pay to fly them out of the country, to pay customs and border agents to round them up. That shit doesn't happen for free. So they're going to cut FEMA. So the next time you see a hurricane, a tornado, a fire swoop through your town or your neighborhood and destroy everything, and you wonder where FEMA is, it's in jail. Instead of saving each other and your neighbors, you're now paying to incarcerate brown people. They're using our money for hate instead of help. And you're good with this?
Promise that you're not angry enough about the fact that the most expensive thing you'll ever pay for in your life is racism. People aren't being hyperbolic or abstract when they say racism is expensive. We can't have universal health care in this country because, my God, an undocumented immigrant just might get a tooth filling on the taxpayer's dime. We can't build more housing in expensive cities and neighborhoods because, my God, the Black family from the bad part of town just might move across the street from me. We can't have free public university because, my God, my precious white children who were born into generational wealth may not be able to compete with the low-income migrants from the Middle East. We can't even talk about homelessness because we have to spend more money on immigration enforcement than almost every other country does on their entire defense because, my God, brown people may get in unauthorized if we don't do that. We had to elect the racist, dementia-ridden orange maniac back into office because he told people who look like me that people who don't look like me are eating their pet cats and dogs. And the people who do look like me believed him. And now we all have to pay for these nonsensical tariffs because economic literacy took a backseat to racism in the last election. Racism is incredibly expensive.
Cowardice. Because this is about racism. And if you can't hear it from them, then hear it from me. As a white woman and a daughter of a man of privilege and power, he knew that his strength was to bring people that didn't look like him to the table of government. And so 50 years later, after Barbara Jordan, aided by white people to have a voice, the first woman of color elected to the South, a woman who sat in the impeachment of Nixon, a woman who said that finally, after amendment, debate, and vote, I am finally part of we the people. To stand here as a 50-year-old woman and know that we now go back in time. So let's talk about cowardice and cheats. Because if you knew you could win this next election, you wouldn't be taking this effort to try to steal 5 seats from elected officials that members of color elected to represent them in Washington, D.C. You wouldn't be doing everything you can to take this coalition of diversity and stand up at the mic and say, why are we doing this? Because we can. And you shield your racism with your party, with ignorance and arrogance, to come up here and say, to be honest with you, I haven't read the bill from the other side. To be honest with you, I haven't talked to the lawyers to be bringing this before. Because you think that people will give you grace on ignorance and arrogance around party because you can't admit that the root of all of this is about racism and power. A power grab. A pure power grab. And so I'm going to ask, don't shake your head, because I'm going to give you a moment to prove what you mean behind that. Because when Donald Trump called Georgia Republicans and said, hey, boys, I need you to steal me almost 12,000 votes. To those men credit, they said, no, sir. We already know what Governor Abbott said.
Welcome back to the channel. Today we are breaking down this viral TikTok where a white elected official actually called out the Texas GOP for what it is, straight up racism. And honestly, it's about time. So here is the thing. Republicans in Texas have spent decades hiding behind buzzwords like election integrity, border security, or traditional values. But behind all that coded languages is systemic racism. Policy designed to suppress black and brown voters, to demonize immigrants, and to protect white supremacy under the banner of conservatism.
It's not that people don't have the facts about racism. They just don't want to hear them. They have all the data, they have all the facts, they don't want them because the truth threatens their identity and their status. And that's why this work isn't just about facts. It's about fear, naming the fear. And if you're white, that's our job. White fragility is a real thing. We all have it in us. And I think if we want to push change forward, we need to be able to hold this fear it triggers and do something with it. And also, equity work isn't just about holding your own fragility. It's about interrupting collapse in other white people. So other people, black people, don't have to. People of the global majority should not have to hold our fragility. We created the problem, and that means our discomfort isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the work.
So here is the thing that I do not understand. People that support detention centers for immigrants and the mass deportation efforts, and I say immigrants because now both documented and undocumented immigrants are being targeted by these operations, okay? People that are okay with that complain about immigrants being a drain to society and wasting American taxpayer money. But why are they not complaining about all the American taxpayer money that it's being used for this anti-immigrant operation measures, whatever you want to call it? Because what do you mean that the Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center is going to cost $450 million the first year? And what do you mean that that money is being taken out of a FEMA shelter and services program? Because what do you mean that you're okay with the budget for Medicaid, public libraries, school lunches, etc. being cut, while also giving ICE $100 billion? What? You say you're anti-immigrant because they abuse and take away your hard-earned American taxpayer money, but that money is being used right now to fund detention centers and mass deportation efforts against immigrants, so they're still using your money. Listen, let's not even talk about how all of these anti-immigrant measures are funding the pockets of rich people, because a lot of these centers are privately owned and they have secured multi-million-dollar deals with the government. Let's also not talk about the billions of dollars that undocumented immigrants contribute to this country and pay for you as a U.S. citizen, an American citizen, to have services, because undocumented immigrants don't have access to these services. Let's not talk about all of that. All I'm saying is that if you are not okay with immigrants wasting your hard-earned American taxpayer money, then you shouldn't be okay with all this funding being used for immigrants. It makes no fucking sense. Like, think about it.
Because I'm a poor white, I just find it so fascinating that poor white people blame other poor people, like poor black people, poor native people, for their problems. I don't think poor white people understand how expensive racism is, especially for you. Here's the thing, any problem you have as a poor white person is systemic. It's because of your government. Your government will block social programs that could potentially help you, because black people may get access to it too. Native people may get access to it too. Immigrants may get it too. And And right now I'm seeing this happening with people from Mississippi that are born white that were completely obliterated by Hurricane Katrina, getting mad and passive aggressive towards NOLA people, black people from NOLA, because of Hurricane Katrina, the documentary by Ryan Coogler. How is your government, the rich white people with all this power in their hands in so many different people's pockets, how is it black people's fault for what those rich white people are doing as a poor white person? How do you arrive to that conclusion? How is 1 + 1 18? I don't get it. Racism is expensive. Racism is why you don't have access to anything. How in natural disasters, you are left for dead. You will get popsicle sticks to rebuild, and that's it. Your insurances will fuck you over. They will leave you behind because you're too poor to afford it. And do you know who you should blame for that? It's not the poor black people, or the people that you think are abusing the system that aren't. Because I'll tell you who's abusing the system. The people that made it. The rich people that benefit from it. Those are those people. And statistically, they are mostly white. So you are being portrayed by your own community. You are being sold down the stream in your poverty by rich white people, and you are blaming the poor black people across that fucking stream. Racism is expensive. I think poor white people need to realize that this Hurricane Katrina documentary by Ryan is not actually about Katrina. It's about what happened during Katrina. It's what happened after Katrina to the black people of New Orleans. Sorry. Maybe if you want to make it about Hurricane Katrina completely obliterating parts of Mississippi, you should talk about that. You should talk about that. I think that you should talk about that. We want to hear you talk about that, but not at the expense of black people. Not on the backs of black people. Not on the coattails of black people. You're mad at the wrong people. Please stop. It's embarrassing.
Why, oh why do poor white people vote against themselves time and time again? They vote for Trump and the other MAGA politicians only to have every promise broken, prices go up, social supports evaporate. Here's why. First, remember what I talked about recently, the psychological wage of whiteness. That term was coined by W.E. Du Bois to describe poor white folks being paid with social status rather than decent living conditions. They're convinced by the elites that they're better than black folks, better than immigrants, Latinos, LGBTQ folks. They're convinced that being white puts them in the same league as the elites. Of course, the elites know otherwise, but the poor whites buy it because they're grasping at straws. Second, they are convinced that the people they're supposedly better than are the big threat in their lives. Not the rich, not the corporations or the politicians, but immigrants, black folks, welfare queens, LGBTQ, criminals, you know, the usual scapegoats. Third, the elites promise protection to poor white folks. A politician comes along and says, I'll keep those people in their place, or I'll kick them out, or I'll lock them up. Or, more politely, I'll defend your values. They don't say, I'll make your life better. Well, they say it, they just don't mean it. They'll say, I'll make sure they don't get ahead of you. Fourth, they vote for the punishment, not the policy. When a law gets passed that slashes public housing or school funding or food aid, they think, good, that'll stop those lazy freeloaders. And they do some mental gymnastics that make them believe it's worth losing those things for their own families in order to see those problematic black people and immigrants and so forth being punished. It gets to a point where just seeing those guys being punished is reward enough, which is pretty sick, but that's how behavior works. Their housing, schools, and groceries are on the chopping block too, but they blame that on Biden. Always a scapegoat. They get hit by the same policies they were told would punish the others, and they blame the wrong people. The system fails them, but they've been trained to blame the scapegoats, not the cause, which is the rich people, the people they voted for. So they think the problem is still those people, not the fact that they were personally manipulated by the people they voted for. They're basically saying, I'll take the hit as long as you don't help them, or worse, as long as you hurt them. That is the psychological wage Du Bois was talking about, the trade-off between material security for racial status. And that's a crying shame, folks. One share, like, save, and comment shows that you care about white people taking responsibility for racism in America. This work is important to me, and I want to keep doing it. If you want to support me, consider a donation of any size to coffee.com/Kelly Snyder. And yeah, spelling is important. Get curious.
So while it's good to see these call-outs happening, we should fall into the trap of celebrating it only when it comes from inside the halls of power. The real credit goes to grassroots movements, to black and brown activists, to everyday people fighting racism daily. Let's not forget, the GOP in Texas has passed voter suppression law. They mandated districts to dilute minority power and push a cultural agenda that scapegoats marginalized groups. They want to ban history classes that talk honestly about racism, but they have no problem passing racism legislation. So guys, thank you for watching my videos. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel to help the channel grow.